and in the area, the technical expertise that we have. In India, of all private sector employment, which is in the organized sector, which is about 12 million, the ITS accounts for about 3.5 million, growing at about 250,000 a year. So it's an important contributor to employment itself. Most importantly, our companies bring about transformational benefits, transformational improvements in productivity, in manufacturing, banking, etc., which have made them very highly sought in different parts of the world. The promotion of IT services, I suppose, can be done through three kinds of activities which all need to happen together. One is, of course, we need to have open doors for our companies to get markets and commercially meaningful market access at that. The second would be through export promotion by showcasing our strengths and tailoring them to the needs of various geographies. And finally, reforms which would make services delivery from India more competitive and be able to withstand the competition which is coming from newer territories where ITS services, especially the BPM part, is taking root, like Vietnam, Philippines, Mexico, Turkey, and a number of other countries, Eastern Europe, and different parts of the world. Market access can be sought through a number of different kinds of negotiations. It could be done multilaterally at the WTO, but since the services pillar in the WTO is quiet in spite of the fact of the approaching ministerial in Nairobi, that more or less kind of rules it out. We have a very active plurilateral engagement with Japan under the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, and that is where a very active dialogue is taking place. I, for one, believe that the RCEP offers a great opportunity for further collaboration, improved market access on both sides, and taking economic engagement to a next higher level between these two countries. In fact, India and Japan have worked very closely together to sort out the goods modality, and Japan has been in the forefront of tailoring ambition under RCEP to suit India. So we've been working very closely together, and that is another reason which gives us an opportunity to get something more out of RCEP. The RCEP negotiations basically seek, in the area of ITS services, to ensure that we are able to continue to use the internet to provide services offshore without needs for residency requirements or local presence of a very onerous kind. The second thing is data security norms need to be reasonable. Security and privacy should not act as non-tariff barriers to market access. Thirdly, movement of professionals. As far as ITS is concerned, it is the engine of service delivery is movement of skilled professionals. They bring in, on the back of these professionals, grows trade in services, and investments flow on the back of trade. So it's a well-established channel which has been used to effect in various other countries, and that is the way we hope progress will also happen in Indo-Japanese ITS trade. And finally, local presence, facilitation of Indian companies, establishing local presence in Japan, running and getting into joint ventures, being able to be treated on par, and being able to service the most discerning Japanese market with the kind of products, custom designed products that they generally provide. While RCEP, a lot of people in India, especially from the industry, were very worried about India's engagement in RCEP, primarily because China is also present. It was a general part of the discourse that engaging in the RCEP, which has ASEAN, China, Japan, Korea, Australia, New Zealand, is, as is said, fools rush in where wise men fear to trade. India is doing something like that. But the way the negotiations have progressed, and as having been chief negotiator for a while, I can see that it is likely to be avenue for creating markets which may lose because of the coming of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. While multilateral and plurilateral fora may be possible areas of improving, of opening up markets, there can be no doubt that the bilateral engagement is perhaps the best way forward. We already have an FTA, a very ambitious FTA, which in the area of goods has reduced tariffs on over 80% of our tariff lines. It has ambitious elements in services as well, and that needs to be deepened and widened. More particularly, the difference between the autonomous regime, the policy framework which allows market access through FDI, various regulations will allow foreign companies to work, and the actual practice, the difference between the autonomous regime and the actual practice needs to be reduced and needs to be bound so that it remains and provides confidence and comfort to our companies that will always be there to access the market. Also, as I mentioned, we have interest in ITS services. These are services that are delivered over the internet or to move with the professionals. It is easy to use measures like those required for homeland security, visa issues, all kinds of regulations to block access. And that is something which we need to ensure remains, because this is an area which can bring huge advantages to the Japanese economy, which is, as all of us know, is not doing too well. Further, looking at it positively, there's a huge amount of synergy between India and Japan. India's strength in software, ITS solution provision, and the manufacturing competence of Japanese the companies are very complementary. In addition, with new areas are coming in where we can collaborate, and these would be the high-tech areas of Internet of Things, startups, etc. And in every way I look at it, it appears to be a win-win opportunity for both sides. For India, you have a large $125 billion market, political goodwill, expanding commercial relations, and an opportunity to diversify exports, 80% of which are to the US and EU, at least for ITS services. Advantages for Japan are also many. Japanese manufacturing is increasingly losing competitiveness to Korea and China. The China plus one strategy which Japan has showcased in order to diversify outsourcing from China to other countries is another opportunity which can increase this partnership. And finally, as has been mentioned earlier, skills shortage, the aging Japanese population, the STEM education and the skills which are widely available amongst ITS professionals is something which makes a very close fit with the requirements of Japanese industry and the financial sector. So there is a great opportunity for win-win for all. Japan has, I'm told, identified skills requirement of about 14,000 professionals, and I dare say that India would be in a position to supply a large proportion of those in different kinds of verticals and in skill categories. How do we do this? Let me just spend some time on how do we do it. I mean, there's, I think, a great role for both industry and government. The fact that NASSCOM top bosses, past, present, and maybe future, are all present in this room gives me confidence to believe that industry is and will continue to play an increasing role in trying to achieve the potentials of this partnership. We believe that our companies can provide custom-built solutions, the kind of things which Tomoro-san was saying. They can reach the zero defect level. They can do it as per your requirements, and they meet the highest security and quality accreditation standards worldwide. So in the ITS space, we are well equipped to cater to the Japanese market. What needs perhaps to be done is that we need to showcase certain elements of brand India and ITS which are not well known by more closer and continuing exchange between the Japanese industry associations, their large companies and others to visit to our campuses of our IT companies so they can get a first-hand information and experience of the kinds of solutions that we provide. That will be number one. The other area would be also to raise the Indian profile in the Japanese market, focusing on high-end talent and design capacities. It is not that we are seeking the back office kinds of services, the BPM kind of solutions, etc., etc. Indian ITS industry is now in the position to provide the best of solutions for the most intractable of problems. And there is a very good case for Japanese companies for maybe unbundling their IT divisions in large behemoths and outsourcing work to Indian companies which by their experience, by their size, would be more nimble and more attuned to the latest possibilities of providing solutions in this sector. The third area is startups. We are now, by sheer numbers, the third largest startup country. And the rate at which we are growing, about 4 per day, we should be second very soon. And as far as tech startups are concerned, we have certainly got an edge. The time has come when the world over, even large multinationals are realizing that to do innovation, you need small teams working in companies which are bereft of big bureaucracies. Take the example of Qualcomm. They have been leaders in their area of work. Most of the design has come through the design centers. But now increasingly, they are wanting to support venture funds with small teams working as startups to develop solutions in the 5G space and for the future. In fact, Qualcomm is investing something like $150 million to finance startups through venture capital funding, both angel and seed. These are the opportunities which are also available to Japanese financiers and Japanese companies, with the view of developing startups to provide tech solutions for Japanese manufacturing and finance sector needs. That is the second possibility we have. Another requirement is that there is perhaps a need for industry and government together to work and remove certain misconceptions which perhaps exist in the mind of the Japanese, especially the middle management level, about what the entry of Indian companies would do to their industry. Will it result in jobs being Bangalored, as the famous phrase goes, or will it lead to some other disruptive changes? And Japanese, culturally we know, are conservative as far as facing change is concerned of certain kinds. The experience of our ITS companies in Europe as well as in the US is that we have not taken away jobs. Because of the enhanced productivity, the increased competitiveness, jobs have grown even in the US market. And that is why the discourse against Indian companies can be sustained in the US only in a run-up to an election. Otherwise, it would not stand the test of logic and reason as well as facts. So these companies do not actually take away jobs. They increase productivity, they enhance competitiveness, and in turn create jobs which will otherwise migrate to other countries. Lastly, we need to invite more and more of these the decision makers in Japan to participate in our fairs and exhibitions to get a sense of what we can offer. The startup ecosystem, let me repeat myself, not only offers opportunities for providing solutions, but is also an investment opportunities for developing the latest technologies in this area. As far as the industry is concerned, these are the areas which they need to collaborate with their counterparts. I always give the example of the auto industry, the Indo-Japanese, the way the Japanese government and industry used the bilateral FTA to negotiate reduction in tariffs for steel. They combined it with investments in the auto sector, with the result that steel and other items from Japan were imported into India duty-free. Investment set up factories which made the best quality cars for the Indian market, for the Japanese market, and for third country markets. The same applies in a reverse manner for ITS. Japanese investments in India can get startups working on solving Japanese problems at a fraction of the costs which they would do elsewhere. In addition to that, the government needs to look at a number of areas through reforms. Without going into details, let me just mention that visas continue to be a problem. Other than the fact that there is complexity in the regime and uncertainty in things, the basic problem is the minimum salary level which is maintained of $25,000, not only for professionals but also for apprentices and for translators and anyone else who works to strengthen the ecosystem. We heard a lot about problem of language, and it is a problem. Indian companies have been able to reach out into geographies which use the English language. In China and Japan, language has certainly been a barrier, but the need and the connect and the complementarity is such that it could be a small barrier. Language could be a small barrier if other things were taken care of. And this includes making available free movement of apprentices and to understand what happens in our global IT hubs in India, as well as translators who could ensure that communication happens. There are also issues about multiple entry, 3-year visas not being given by Indian embassy, which is a major problem when we consult with Japanese companies, in spite of the fact that the e-business visa, the guidelines allow for it, but though this is something which is improving in the last few months. For language, I do not see why we can't have a very, very vibrant university exchange program between our universities and Japanese universities. At least, if not get scholars in Japanese, at least have business Japanese teaching and training available almost ubiquitously. The Ministry of Human Resource Development is working on certain initiatives, and I'm sure on the Japanese side also efforts are being made, including thinking of having in Japanese university IT, computer science, and these kinds of courses in the English language to produce English-speaking experts which could then work for Japanese companies as well as Indian companies. There are also taxation issues, mostly related to the MAT in SEZs, as well as the withholding tax on fees for technical services, which has been which Japanese companies tell us has been a burden and a hurdle for accessing services from India, as well as on the Indian side, operationalization of the Social Security Agreement, which was signed some years ago in 2012, but has not come into operation yet. This puts on Indian companies an additional cost of about 20% and does affect their margin and their competitiveness. Most of these things are those which can happen, as has been said around the table. There's lots of headroom, there's a huge market, there's a complementary opportunity. Japan is certainly a difficult and discerning market to penetrate, but in light of the huge potential and with coordinated efforts, I think it can happen. What we need is a package of initiatives and engagement happening together, which could turn the very good sentiment that prevails in India-Japanese economic relations to effective collaboration in IT services, investments, and setting up joint ventures. As far as Department of Electronics and IT is concerned, we are, together with the DIPP, the Department of Commerce, NASSCOM, working to improve ease of doing business, as well as implement a specific strategy package to try to make this link between Indian and Japanese IT/ITES sector. You, sir, said you had a wonderful song when you said ki Ajeeb Dastan hai. It does appear to me that Ajeeb Dastan hai, that we don't have a much bigger cooperation than we do, and I think soon that will change. My song for the day would be Ye Dosti Hum Nahi Chhodenge, etc., etc. So this is a partnership. I believe if you can dream it, you can do it. This is something which is waiting to happen, and I'm sure there will be no jugaad in it. Thank you so much. Thank you for your patience.
So, we had three very passionate speakers, besides all the lyrics also that came in. But I think we clearly established there was a market, and it wasn't just a market, it's already happening. And Deepak, thank you very much for bringing in the policy intervention, something that needs to be done. I must request Dr. Ambassador here. Ambassador, we are just out of time. Do you think we have a few minutes for any questions?
I think that we should take, we made up some time. So let's take half the time which we made up. 15 minutes we should go. I think commission of the next chair. 7.5. Seven.
Negotiations.
Yeah.
Next chair is giving us 7.5.
Yeah, thank you. I think everything got established. Market, it's happening. There are areas to work on, and the task is bigger, but I think there is work to do, which I think is well on its way. I'm sure there are questions that come, but I just want to add one area that I think we kind of overlap. In IT, one very important area is IP. And I think the Indian IP system today is extremely robust, right? Surely there are other countries that Japan has been going to, but I think we have seen it. We work for almost 500 of the Fortune 500 companies, 98% of them in India. And we have been able to do outstanding, very, very sensitive work managing. So any concerns that anyone had about, you mentioned about R&D, etc., I think we have a very good IP regime as well. Yes, sir.
Yeah, my question is to Dr. Deepak. The way you referred about our Indian IT has complained by WTO, why not to diversify to hardware also? The way you pointed out $75 billion is just by IT. So we can make it more than 10 times. So what are the hits by the government? Why not to encourage hardware technology also?
Yeah, that's a very valid point you make. We had a nascent electronics industry in the 70s and early 80s, but when we entered into the ITA-1 agreement, and even when the industry was nascent, we agreed to zero duties. That led to the entire hardware electronics industry perishing in India. It could not handle the competition. You see, Samsung, the scale of electronics manufacture abroad is something which is to be seen to be. Samsung has exports of $290 billion. This is just exports, which is equal to all our exports across all areas. So we could not handle that. Now what we've done is, under the ITA-2, we have kept out of it. We were nudged, persuaded, encouraged to join it. We have not. And the ITA-2 has lines relating to consumer electronics, medical electronics, etc., which give us an opportunity to the electronics industry to set up manufacturing. Our projection is that there will be a need of $400 billion worth of electronics in India by 2020. This would be the biggest item of import. It's already the second biggest item of import, electronics, after crude, and it will, in 3 years, at present rates, become the largest item of imports. So electronics manufacturing has to be done. As part of the Digital India vision of the Prime Minister, electronics manufacturing, promoting manufacturing of electronics is one of the pillars. And in some sectors like low-end mobile phones, it's beginning to happen. This year we will manufacture 250 million mobile phones compared to about 100 billion last year and maybe 50 million the year before. This is because of certain use of a mix of tariff measures, subsidies, and infrastructure support given in certain clusters for electronics manufacture. So electronics manufacture is certainly an area of priority for the government. The ecosystem, the way it is such that we have certain advantages now, and we will soon be coming out with a policy for incentivizing mega electronics manufacturing projects, which should further convert the good sentiment into real investment decisions.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Just one quick question about a related area, because if you look at India and the United States as partners in ITES, it's backed up by a huge number of Indian STEM students in the United States. In fact, an infestation of Indian startups and entrepreneurs in the Silicon Valley. Now, we don't have this kind of an ecosystem. We talked about the language barrier, we talked about other barriers, but we don't have a knowledge partnership system with Japan, which can not only backstop the growth of our ITES partnerships, but also expand it to a broader cultural people-to-people level. IIT Hyderabad, where we have BVR Mohan Reddy here, he's the chairman of the board. We thought that it was going to make a major difference, especially because we inducted digital communications as one of the curriculum focuses of the IIT. I don't know really how much has happened. Neemrana, again, you got the NIIT University in Neemrana, and you got hundreds of Japanese companies and clusters working nearby, but there is no synergy between the two. There is no sort of interlinkage as of now. So how do we build this knowledge partnership, and can NASSCOM design, along with Secretary Deepak, who was most inspiring in his remarks, some kind of a broader partnership on the knowledge front, which can be then taken up at the summit level and made part of decisions when Mr. Abe comes in 3 or 4 weeks' time. Thank you.
Mr. Singh, you're aware number of initiatives that we have done at IIT Hyderabad at this point of time to promote this knowledge sharing between Japan and India. We have at least 3 universities participating from the Japanese side with IITH. But pardon me if I use that word called some of these language barriers back again, or cultural barriers that we have, or some of the challenges that we have in governmental thinking itself. They've still not gone to a level where we've had other IITs where government-to-government level participation was there. IIT Kanpur, the 10 Ivy League universities came forward, set up IIT Kanpur, and we had so much of faculty presence. Especially when Som and I graduated from IIT Kanpur, we used to have at least 50% of the populace used to be from American universities who used to come and teach. With great amount of effort, we're getting these Japanese professors. We now have some of them resident in IIT Hyderabad. I think it requires a lot more effort, and that's where we are at this point of time. We're trying to promote that a lot more than what's happened in the past. Exchange of students, for instance. Exchange of faculty in terms of going for postdoctoral research. All these are happening, but still it's not gone to the magnitude that you like it to be, but the attempts are on.
Yeah, but I would also add here that, you know, if you, I do work a little bit with New Zealand government. This year, 12,500 Indians are going to go to New Zealand to study, right? And I think that's happening because New Zealand has universities, but there are not enough students there, so how do they fill up their universities? And they have a need. And you see the amount of marketing UK and Australian universities do here. So I think there is a need. I hope there is a felt need in Japan as well, which probably is currently met by a very large influx of Chinese students that have come there. But to have that diversity that I think you spoke about also, I think it's important that we get the Japanese universities to change the mindset of our own youth, because for them, West or English-speaking areas like Australia and New Zealand were comfort zones. And how do we change this? I remember when we were putting up the first factory for Denso in India, they had a system of AOTS. Every person who went for training went through a 6-week language, cultural stuff, and you're very much aware of that scholarship. So I think there is need for promoting those kind of things as extra influence to make this happen. And it's not only linked to IT, right? This morning the minister was talking about our cooperation on railways and so on. I think that needs to be taken up as a task. I think very valid point you have raised.
Just to add to that, while this may happen, I think in the interim, the use of apprentice, the model of India-Japan IT-ITS partnership will be slightly different, I think, from that of the India-US because of the language, as well as because of the number of students who are studying there because of language again. But apprentices, movement of students ultimately, but apprentices, if that movement can be facilitated, people from Japan at that level come and see the opportunities. Japan has not, let me put it, not been convinced of the opportunity in the IT-ITS sector. Japanese companies, a number of them are working in India. They use the Indian business model to cater to the Western market. They are not using Indian expertise in design, and design in India to keep IPs here is one part of the strategy, which is part of Make in India and Digital India. They have not used the capacity of design in India to develop custom-built solutions for problems of home industry. That is the difference, and that perhaps